I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And welcome to Rob and Nate Record a Podcast.
It is February the 23rd, 2020. We are returning to our IMDb Top 250 series.
After a long pause.
A long hiatus on this, but we are getting back to it. The way this works is we go through the IMDb Top 250 list in 50-unit chunks to go through what its audiences, what its reviewers have rated the best movies. This is also a series for which we do no preliminary work. We literally scroll slowly through the list, see what it says, and then say what we have to say about these movies based on basically memory.
And as they come up.
Yeah.
Are you doing evens or am I doing evens?
I'll start, I suppose. Okay, so we are now at number 100 from 1985 is Come and See. This is a film, looks like it's a German, possibly Russian film. A little summary says, after finding an old rifle, a young boy joins the Soviet resistance movement against ruthless German forces and experiences the horrors of World War II.
So, have you seen this?
It must be a Russian film. I have not seen it. I feel like I've heard the title, but I know nothing about it beyond that little summary that we read and the poster, which has a boy's face on it.
Yeah, me neither. Number 99, Full Metal Jacket from 1987. This is a Stanley Kubrick film. I have not actually seen this in its entirety.
I've not seen it.
Really? Okay.
I've seen most Stanley Kubrick films. I think there's only two major Stanley Kubrick films that I haven't seen, and some of the early things he did independently in New York that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
But Full Metal Jacket I have not. I own it, but I just haven't gotten around to seeing it.
A pragmatic U.S. Marine observes the dehumanizing effects the Vietnam War has on his fellow recruits, from their brutal boot camp training to the bloody street fighting in Hue.
Number 98, Reservoir Dogs from 1992. This is Quentin Tarantino's directorial debut. He, of course, wrote it. It is about a group of criminals that go by, their names are different colors, Mr. Pink, Mr. Green, etc. And they're planning a heist, and so you do the preparatory part and the meetings they're having. You never actually see the heist, but you see the aftermath of it. It's solid. It's very Tarantino. It's a strong debut. There's some good performances in it. It's an ensemble cast, as you would come to expect with Tarantino's work. It's got Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, Chris Penn in it. Steve Buscemi is in it as well. It's good. Have you seen this?
I've seen parts of it. I don't think I've seen it in its entirety. Mm-hmm. I should probably catch up on that one. Number 97 on the list is the 1995 film Braveheart, directed and starring Mel Gibson. Classic film. It's been quite a while since I've seen this film. I don't think I've seen this film in probably 12 to 15 years.
Wow.
But it's a good film.
I've only seen it once. I saw it in, I think, 2007, 2008. I should probably revisit it. I remember when it won and how well received it was. And this was this time when Mel Gibson was like universally loved.
Yeah, that has since changed.
Which has changed quite a bit. I did go in 2012 to Scotland. And this was right around the time that the movie Brave, the Disney Pixar animated movie, came out, which is set in Scotland. So it had improved the tourism situation in Scotland, which was good to before, but it made it better. And one of the tour guides told us that the year after Braveheart came out, it tripled the tourism in Scotland.
Wow, that's both surprising and unsurprising.
Mm.
So,
and that, of course, is the tale of William Wallace, who was a patriotic, important figure in Scottish nationalism. Number 96 is Toy Story from 1995. It's the first Pixar animated feature film. It's iconic. It's very solid. I saw this theatrically with my family. Did you see it that way as well?
I don't recall if I saw this in the theaters or not. I honestly can't remember. But yeah, this is a great film. A great start to this franchise. Mm-hmm. Just a wonderful film. Strong cast. Great starting picture from Pixar. And I find it interesting that we have two films back-to-back from 1995.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, solid film.
Yeah, I love that film. Number 95 from 1996 is a movie called The Bandit. I'm assuming you haven't seen this one?
I don't know this.
Brandon the Bandit, released from prison after 35 years, searches for vengeance and his lover. Looks like it's probably a foreign film. I can't tell what nationality by the names. It's directed by someone named Yavuz Turgal.
So you have names here like Sinur Ugur Sremnik. So I'm thinking Eastern European, possibly Russian.
Yep. I haven't seen that one, so.
Number 94 from 1997, Child of Heaven. I don't know this one either. Summary says, after a boy loses his sister's pair of shoes, he goes on a series of adventures in order to find them. When he can't, he tries a new way to win a new pair.
Yeah. One kind of interesting note on some of these ratings on this list, as we've passed 97 and 96, those both had in the vicinity of 900,000 votes. These last two titles, while their rating is higher, both are under 60,000 votes for these titles, but because it's based on the rating, they're rated very high on the list. So, number 93, this is a good film. I really enjoy this one. The 1997 Gus Van Sant directed Good Will Hunting. This was a good performance from Robin Williams, amongst other people.
Yeah, as did Matt Damon and Ben Affleck for the writing.
Yeah, great film about the janitor at MIT who has a gift for mathematics, but just wonderful performances, very thoughtful film. Yeah, it's a good film.
It's a good film. Yeah, it's one of, in some ways, one of the more significant films of the 1990s, what it did for Robin Williams, and also for kind of introducing Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. They'd been in things before, but this was really kind of their coming out film, and they won, that Oscar for it, and subsequent to that, they were big stars. It is a good film. I only saw it within the last 3 or 4 years for the first time.
I'm kind of surprised by that. Why is that?
I don't know. It's just hadn't gotten around to it.
Yeah, that's a great film.
But it's good. Many drivers in this.
I think I would watch this again 2 or 3 years ago, but yeah, that's one I wouldn't mind watching again sometime. So.
Number 92, the Best Picture winner for 1999 is American Beauty, directed by Sam Mendes. This is a story of a sexually frustrated suburban father who has a midlife crisis after becoming infatuated with his daughter's best friend. Kevin Spacey is in this. He won an Oscar for it. Annette Bening plays the wife. Thora Birch, the daughter. Wes Bentley is the neighbor boy who she develops a crush on. Chris Cooper is in this as well as the very militaristic father of the neighbor boy. This is a film that really captured the zeitgeist of its time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It inaugurated the career of Alan Ball. Alan Ball had been around. He wrote for Roseanne, among other things. But after the success of this film, HBO approached him, basically said, we want to do a show about a family that runs a funeral home, and you can basically do with it what you will. And so that became 6 Feet Under, which is one of my absolute favorite shows. There's some criticism. I mean, there was some pushback about this film at the time it came out for a number of reasons, including Kevin Spacey oddly plays a sexual predator, a heterosexual one in this case. I don't want to spoil too much of what happens in this movie. It's a solid movie, but it's very much of its time. You look at it now and it's like, man, pre-9/11, the concerns weren't so big.
I'm a little surprised that it's rated as high as, that it's in the top 100. I'm not surprised that it's in the top 250, but I'm a little surprised that it's in the top 100.
It is a real good film.
It was good. I need to revisit this. I haven't seen this in quite a while. You and I have...
I didn't know. You must have only fairly recently seen it. Or
I've seen it.
You've seen it.
Yeah,
okay.
I saw... This was a favorite of my wife's when we started dating.
Oh, okay.
So I saw this in the early 2000s. Or mid-2000s, I guess I should say. But yeah... You and I have at different times had conversations about how I don't pay as much attention to directors. I find it interesting that this was directed by Sam Mendes, who this last year was the director of the film 1917. Kind of an interesting arc for him.
Yeah, it is an interesting arc, and him doing the Bond films and having his a lot of his early works being more in this kind of indie school. Yeah. That has been an interesting arc for him.
Number 91 on the list, Requiem for a Dream from the year 2000, directed by Darren Aronofsky. I don't think I've seen this. I'm familiar with the name, but I haven't seen it.
I have seen it. This is a film about drug addiction. It stars Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, Ellen Burstyn's in it. This is a rough watch. I have seen it. I saw it in thirds. I mean, it's that rough. Like, I didn't want to watch more than 30, 40 minutes of it at a time. It's very depressing. Very solid piece of filmmaking. Darren Aronofsky is one of the more interesting directors out there today.
Wait, Aronofsky, isn't he the guy that did, like, Black Swan or something?
Yeah, Black Swan. He did Noah. He did a film called Mother.
Okay, so he has a mixed resume.
Yeah, so even
Well,
when...
you liked Noah, right?
I did like Noah.
I didn't like Noah.
I'm one of the few fans of the movie Noah. Aronofsky, I think, is always worth seeing. Even if it doesn't fully work, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And Requiem for the Dream works.
Number 90 on the list, the 2000 film from director Guy Ritchie, Snatch. Have you seen this?
Not seen Snatch. I don't know if I've ever seen a Guy Ritchie film.
I don't remember if I've seen this in totality. If I have, it was not in a single sitting. It was broken up. It's unscrupulous boxing promoters, violent bookmakers, a Russian gangster, incompetent amateur robbers, and supposedly Jewish jewelers fight to track down a priceless stolen diamond that obviously appears to have been stolen.
It's a caper film. It's a chase film.
Yeah,
that's what Guy Ritchie does,
cast.
right?
Jason Statham, Brad Pitt, Benicio del Toro, Dennis Farina. Strong cast.
Jason Statham is physically strong.
Yeah. He's a decent actor within his subset. He's not someone who's likely ever going to win an Oscar. But within his subset and the genre of films that he makes, he's a solid actor. You can't say that he's not a successful working actor. So
he is a successful working actor, that's true.
Yeah.
Number 89, Amélie from 2001, starring the beautiful Audrey Tautou. It's directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. This is just a very charming film, kind of magical film about a young woman in France in principally 1997, because a major event is the death of Princess Diana that's referred to numerous times. The film came out in 2001. It's a magical, playful film. It's a beautiful romance. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, Audrey Tautou does a great job in this movie. Yeah, it's a wonderful piece of film. That young girl, just watching her interact and play around, it's fun to watch.
And even though some of the subject matter actually gets, like, the guy that she likes works at like a porn video rental place. Yeah. And so there's this weird juxtaposition of things that are kind of dark, and I think like her mother dies early in the film, and that's kind of dark.
Well, there's some other things. But then
it's very joyful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a happy film. It's a joyful film.
Yeah. Number 88 on the list, I'm a little surprised it's this high, the 2004 film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind from director Michael Gondry, starring Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, Tom Wilkinson, and Jerry Robert Byrne. This is a good film. Yeah,
and Michael Gondry is French, and at the time he made this film, I think he spoke only the most broken of English, and yet he still managed to do a solid job directing Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet. Tom Wilkinson, Kirsten Dunst was in this, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's about Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet had a relationship that had broken up. It was very painful for him, so he elects to have a procedure performed to erase her from his memory. And in that process, a representation of him is stuck in his mind, living his relationship backwards. And then he comes to realize that even though it was painful, that he wants to keep this memory, it's part of who he is. This film was very well received at the time. A lot of people really loved this film. It's been close to 15 years, I think, since I've seen it. Yeah. I remember being very impressed with it. It's got a very distinct visual style, which is true of at least the one other Gondry film which I saw, which was called The Science of Sleep, which I hated. Yeah. But I did quite like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
This is also a good period for Kate Winslet. This is around the same time she did The Reader. A few years before that. Just a really strong period in Kate Winslet's career. She's a wonderful, talented actress who I enjoy seeing on the screen.
And a little something different for Jim Carrey to do as well.
Yeah, this was before I think everyone realized just how crazy Jim Carrey had become. So this would have probably been before Man on the Moon?
No, Man on the Moon was 99.
Oh, so then I'm getting a little mixed up. Yeah. But yeah, Jim Carrey was controlled in this. Jim Carrey needs somebody who can keep him reined in.
Yeah, like a lot of comic actors who are going into doing something dramatic, it's the rein is what makes all the difference. And so Gondry did a good job with him.
Yeah, great film. I was surprised that this was number 88 on the list. Does it surprise you it's this high?
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, I
thought it would have worked itself a little further down the list.
Like somewhere around like 150 or something. Yeah. But it's a good film. Solid film.
Number 87, Inglourious Bastards. This is Quentin Tarantino's revisionist World War II film, which we've talked about a little bit on the previous podcast. I went to see this movie theatrically with my sister. This was her first Tarantino film, so I spent a fair amount of the film just glancing over at her, seeing how is she taking this. And at first, a little bit of confusion. What is this? And then before too long, she was getting the rhythm and really enjoying it. This film is great. It is the film that introduced us to Christopher Waltz. Christopher Waltz actually was a little bit of a last-minute replacement. The part was originally of the evil Nazi, was supposed to go to Leonardo DiCaprio. Who
Really?
couldn't do it because of some other commitment. But this made Christopher Waltz a star internationally, a German actor, obviously. This is just a fun film. It's got a crazy ending. It goes all over the place. There's wonderful scenes of tension. There's wonderful scenes of humor. I adore this film. It's probably the closest to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood of any of Quentin Tarantino's other films, which, of course, we've talked a fair amount about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood recently.
It's interesting that they would have tried to have gotten Leonardo DiCaprio to play that role. It would have given us a much earlier uniting of Quentin Tarantino, Brad Pitt, and Leonardo DiCaprio than we ended up getting.
No.
So, question for you. You might know the answer to this. I don't. Does Quentin Tarantino write all of his own films that he directs?
Yes. Now, there's one asterisk on that. So all of them have been original stories and screenplays by him, with the exception of Jackie Brown, where he was adapting a novel.
Okay. Number 86 on the list, the 2010 film Toy Story 3. I am surprised this is ranked ahead of the original Toy Story. I didn't like this one as much as the original Toy Story.
Well, the original Toy Story is looser and more fun. This one is, as I said on a previous podcast, that Toy Story 4 is really the epilogue. Toy Story 3 is the conclusion.
Yeah.
It's got a surprisingly emotional conclusion. The last 20, 30 minutes of that film. Something of a roller coaster emotionally, which in a film about animated toys you wouldn't think, but it shows just how good they were writing, how good the performances, the voice performances were in the film. I adored this film. I believe I cried when I saw it theatrically.
Well, and I should clarify, this is a good film. I just think that the original Toy Story is better than this one.
It's funner.
Yeah. So.
And it's more innovative because it was first.
Yeah.
Number 85 from 2005, My Father and My Son. The family of a left-wing journalist is torn apart after a military coup in 1980s Turkey. Sounds interesting, but I have not seen it and know nothing else about it.
Me neither. Number 84 on the list, Incendiaries from 2010 from director Denis Villeneuve. I don't know anything about this film, do you?
I do not.
Twins journey to the Middle East to discover their family history and fulfill their mother's last wishes.
Number 83, A Separation. I have seen this one from 2011. This is an Iranian film about a married couple going through a separation preparatory possibly to a divorce, which is hard to get in Iran for various reasons, principally religious. The couple loves each other. They still love each other. The reason they're wanting to separate is the wife has an opportunity to go, I believe she's a teacher of some sort, to go outside of Iran for a time and wants to bring the daughter to give her that experience. Possibly also wants to leave permanently. It's never directly said. Father does not want to go, principally because his father is old, lives with them, has dementia, and he just will not leave him to be cared for by others. Insists on caring for him, even though father doesn't even recognize who he is. And so they separate, and because the wife's not at home, I think she taught only part-time, they need to bring in somebody to watch the father to watch the grandfather while the father's at work. And something happens with this woman they hire that could really destroy a number of lives. I won't get into it in much more detail. One of the things I loved about this film is the juxtaposition between the universal, things that are very normal, and the things that are very particular to a place like Iran. So there's a scene early on where the father is driving around with the daughter. They have a 12, 13-year-old daughter. And they stop at a gas station, and he tells her, fill up the car with gas, teaching her how to do these things, and go and pay the guy. So she does. And when she comes back, he says, well, where's the change? It's like, well, I gave it all to him. The rest is a tip. It's like, he doesn't get a tip. You pump the gas. Go back and get the change. It's like, Dad, I don't go back and get the change. So she goes, brings it back. So, here's the change, Dad. Okay, you keep it. What? You need to understand the value of money. And that's just a wonderful universal moment that could happen almost anywhere. And then there's a moment where the lady that's watching the grandfather isn't paying attention to him, and he poops his pants. And so he's sitting there in his own filth. You got to change the pants. Only he's a man, she's a woman. There is a hotline, I guess this really exists, that she has to call to get permission from the religious authorities because she's going to be seeing this man's privates in the course of changing his underwear. Has to get permission. So if there's a man there that can do it, no man that can do it. How bad is it? It's crazy. So it's a really interesting film. It's very powerful, strong performances. I highly recommend A Separation as a movie. In your marital life, that's up to you. I don't stand up.
Number 82 on the list from 2012, a movie called The Hunt, directed by Thomas Vinterberg. Are you familiar with this film?
I am not.
It says a teacher lives a lonely life, all the while struggling over his son's custody. His life slowly gets better as he finds love and receives good news from his son, but his new luck is about to be brutally shattered by an innocent little lie.
It's got Mads Mikkelsen, who we know from Bond, from Casino Royale, but I know nothing about this movie, even precisely where it's from.
Yeah.
Which could also be told, I would think, of our next film, number 81, And a Houden, from 2018. It says, a series of mysterious events changed the life of a blind pianist who must now report a crime that he should technically know nothing of. Sounds intriguing, know nothing about it.
Sounds like it's some sort of Asian film. The director's name is Sriram Raghavan.
The long names here and the way they sound could denote to me India or Pakistan.
Yeah.
One of the people in this film is credited only as Taboo.
Yeah.
So either really long names or really tiny names.
Know nothing about that film. I know Nate will enjoy this next film, though. Number 80, The Great Dictator from 1940. Probably most everybody is familiar with a few scenes of this film, even if they haven't seen it in its entirety. This is the Charlie Chaplin directed and starring film. Opposite him is Paulette Goddard, Jack Oakey, and Reginald Gardner. Charlie Chaplin plays Hitler, basically Hitler.
Adenoid Hinkle, the dictator of Tomania. He plays both Hinkle and a Jewish barber who just happens to look exactly like him. So you know where this is going from the start. It's a funny satire. It's got some moments of poignancy. It has an awareness of what was happening to Jews in Europe in 1940.
Yeah.
And this film got some backlash because a lot of people thought he was stepping on some toes, that a lot of Americans weren't ready to really deal with what was happening in Europe yet. It's a great movie. It's really funny. Again, it's got some really poignant scenes in it. Paulette Goddard, who plays the love interest, was, I believe, Chaplin's wife at the time. She's good in it, but it's obviously Chaplin's film.
Yeah. Everyone's familiar with at least one scene from this film, though most people have not seen that scene in its entirety.
Are you thinking the Globe scene?
The speech.
Oh, the speech. Okay. There's a scene where, as Hinkle, he plays with a inflated globe, kind of like Hitler playing with the world, and at the end, he pops the globe and he kind of pouts. That's a very famous scene. But the scene where, spoiler, Hinkle and the Jewish barber get mixed up, and so the Jewish barber is being brought on stage to give a speech, and then he completely breaks character and gives a speech basically as Chaplin, decrying war and what's happening in Europe.
Yeah.
Strong movie.
And like I said, if you haven't seen that scene in its entirety, go watch the entirety of that scene. That speech, it's an amazing speech. It's worth watching it just for that speech. So...
Number 79 from 1950, Sunset Boulevard. Love this movie. Billy Wilder. It's the film that made William Holden a big star. He had been in Hollywood for roughly a decade, but hadn't really made his splash yet, and this film did. He plays a writer, down on his luck writer from the Midwest, moved to Hollywood, became a kind of a B-level screenwriter. He's at the end of his rope fiscally. He's about to lose his apartment, about to lose his car, and he loves his car. And in fact, the collection people end up chasing him for the car, and so he pulls into a driveway off Sunset Boulevard, just a place to hide. And it turns out to be a mansion that belongs to a fading silent screen star named Norma Desmond, played by real-life silent screen star Gloria Swanson. She finds out that this man, Joe Gillis, is a writer. I've got a screenplay I've been working on. I'll pay you to help me rewrite it. And she's delusional. She has this idea that she's going to make a comeback. And so she's written this screenplay based on the Salome story from the New Testament, the princess who has John the Baptist beheaded. It's very much a silent screen type story, not appropriate for 1950. But William Holden decides, I'll take this job. I need this money. And then he's also romancing this young girl played by Nancy Olson. And there's a jealousy thing. And it's wonderful. It's a biting satire of Hollywood. It was not well received by the other studios. They did not like this. This does not make us look good. But Billy Wilder's like, that's the way it is here. It's like, these people are forgotten. And very good. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if we do a podcast on this at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have not seen that yet. Number 78 on the list, I am a fan of this film, the 1954 Alfred Hitchcock directed film, The Rear Window.
Rear Window, yes.
Or just Rear Window, a wheelchair-bound photographer spies on his neighbors from his apartment window and becomes convinced one of them has committed murder. This stars James Stewart, Grace Kelly, Wendell Corey, and Thelma Ritter. This is a very strong film. It's fun. It's been remade a couple of times, but this is a great classic film.
It's got a wonderful gimmick. And they built this large set, this multi-story set of a courtyard at a New York City apartment complex. So you had different apartments that you could look in to the windows, and there'd be little sets in there, and they have things going on. And so Jimmy Stewart is a professional photographer, injures himself on assignment, stuck in his apartment, gets a pair of binoculars, uses that as entertainment, to spy on the neighbors. And so you have these various storylines going on with the neighbors that you follow. But one of those storylines has to deal with one of his neighbors whose wife just disappears, and he becomes convinced that the neighbor has murdered his wife. Again, the gimmick of this film with that set and the Rear Window, and that's wonderful, but it transcends that gimmick. It's a wonderful film. It's great performance by Jimmy Stewart. Grace Kelly is absolutely beautiful in it. It's also a very early... Well, I don't know if it's early or not, but it's a performance by Raymond Burr as the neighbor who may have killed his wife, who's best known for the TV series he did, Ironside and Perry Mason.
Like I said, this film's been remade a few times.
All to lesser effect.
Yeah, I can not disagree with that. I think probably, though, the best remake of this was the movie Disturbia. It's probably the first film with Shia LaBeouf that I ever actually liked. I know Nate and I will disagree on the quality of that film. In terms of a PG-13 thriller, that's one of the best ones I've seen in a long time. That is a remake. It's a decent film, but this one is far superior.
Yeah.
Like, Disturbia would never make this list.
No.
Rear Window certainly
Disturbia would be well in 4,000, 7,000, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. I think it's better than that, but Nate and I will forever disagree on that. I think it's a good way to introduce a younger generation to this story and then get them back to the original.
And this film, the first time I saw it was on TBS. I think I was probably in middle school. It was on a Saturday. And there were, commercials because it was on broadcast television. And every commercial break I was just so excited. Oh, this is great. I absolutely loved it. I've also seen it on the big screen. It's worth your while to see it on the big screen.
Oh, I'm sure if it came on the big screen, I'd go out of my way to see that.
You see so many more details than you can see on a television screen. Number 77, Paths of Glory from 1957. This is a Stanley Kubrick-directed film. It stars Kirk Douglas, Ralph Meeker, Adolphe Menjou. It is about the French army in World War I. Kirk Douglas is, I believe, a colonel. He had been a lawyer in civilian life. He is commanded to lead some men on what is basically a suicide mission. Very early in that over-the-top attack, they're getting slaughtered. And so they retreat. Or actually, I think a good portion of them may have never even left the trenches because it was just such a bad decision to do this particular attack. And so because too many people participated in this humiliating defeat, the French army knows, well, we can't kill them all. Select 3 at random, and we're going to kill them for cowardice. And so Kirk Douglas, having been a lawyer, decides, I am going to defend these men. It's a strong movie. It's a short movie. It's only about 88 minutes, so it's one that I've shown to quite a few people. Early studio film for Stanley Kubrick, and even though it's a studio film, it very much has its stamp. It's considered one of the great anti-war movies.
Number 76 on the list is the film Witness for the Prosecution, another Billy Wilder film. This one also from 1957. Stars Tyrone Power, Marlene Dietrich, Charles Lawton, and Elsa Lancaster. I've never seen this. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, this is a great movie. This is based on an Agatha Christie play. Charles Lawton and Elsa Lancaster, husband and wife. He plays, in real life, he plays an old lawyer who's brought in to defend Tyrone Power, who's accused of killing a woman that he may have been having an affair with, an older woman, if memory serves. It's been a while since I've seen it. It's a courtroom film. It's a really strong courtroom film. It's got some nice twists to it. It's got some great characters, got some great humor in it. Very strong movie. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
It's also been remade a couple times.
Number 75, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, from 1964. Again, another Stanley Kubrick. This stars Peter Sellers, George C. Scott, Sterling Hayden, Keenan Wynn. I have never seen this in its entirety.
Oh, great film. The first time I saw it, I think I was in middle school. I've seen it many, many times. In fact, I've seen it so many times it may have lost some of its effectiveness to me. It's a great dark comedy. Peter Sellers plays three characters. He plays the President of the United States, he plays a British exchange officer, and he plays a former Nazi scientist known as Dr. Strangelove. It's a great film. When they started production of this film, the intention was to make a serious movie about a nuclear crisis that could result in the Third World War. And as him and I want to say Terry Southern, I'm forgetting the name of his co-writer, they were writing it, I guess, often at night and getting a little drunk. They're like, this is funny. So they decided, let's make it a comedy. Let's make it a dark comedy. It's got some wonderful sequences in it. Great performances. This is early performance for George C. Scott playing military man, which he'd kind of make his career doing. It's a wonderful movie. Film literacy film for sure.
Yeah.
Number 74, Alien, from 1979, directed by Ridley Scott and starring Sigourney Weaver, Thomas Skerritt, and John Hurt. I've only seen this once. I don't have a super strong memory of it. Obviously, it gave birth to the franchise, which is still around in one capacity or another.
Yeah.
I remember thinking it was good. It was considered quite scary at the time, and the designs of the aliens are very memorable.
Yeah. I saw this when I was probably too young to see it.
Yeah.
It scared the crap out of me. I've seen it a couple times since then. Yeah, it's a good film. It's very effective in its horror. But yeah. Number 73 on the list, from Francis Ford Coppola, the 1979 film Apocalypse Now. I haven't seen this in its entirety. I know Nate has.
I've only seen it once, though, and I saw it in a college literature class because it is basically an adaptation of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness novel, transplanted from colonial Central Africa to the Vietnam War. Martin Sheen is assigned to go deep in country, deep into the jungle, to retrieve an officer who has gone off his rocker and has actually established basically a cult around him. So it's a gradual descent into darkness and insanity. Vietnam is an appropriate venue. The Vietnam War is a very appropriate venue to tell that story. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happened in the production of this movie, so much that there is a feature-length documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now. Also a film literacy film, is true of most all of the films we're talking about today. I would recommend seeing it, and I need to see it again because it's been 17, 18 years since I've seen it.
Wow.
Kubrick again for The Shining, 1980. This is an adaptation of the Stephen King story. It stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and Danny Lloyd and Scatman Crothers. Theatrical sequel called Dr. Sleep came out late last year. This is the story about a man who takes his family to the Overlook Hotel up in the mountains of Colorado. They're to be the weekend property keepers, maintain the property, that kind of thing. And he thinks, Jack Nicholson thinks that will give him time to work on his novel. But the house is haunted, very haunted, the hotel is, and he goes crazy and decides to kill his family. And it's a scary, surreal film. Stephen King was not super happy with the way it was handled. Kubrick tended to take his liberties with adaptations. He'd be like, oh, there's one or two things in this story I really like, and I'm going to riff off of these. But it's a very effective film. Ironically, I've only seen it once. I do own it. I had been meaning to revisit it and watch it and then go see the Dr. Sleep film theatrically, but I never got around to it. It's hard to forget the visuals in this film. It's very distinct visually.
Yeah, I have not seen this film.
Wow.
But I'm familiar with some of the scenes. So,
and it's a film that gets referenced over and over again. Did you see the Ready Player One?
No.
There's an entire sequence where they go into the movie through like a memory simulation thing, and so they interact with the sets and stuff from the movie. And of course, a lot of these sets were rebuilt for the Dr. Sleep movie, so it's very iconic.
Yeah, definitely iconic imagery. Number 71 on the list is the Steven Spielberg film from 1981, Raiders of the Lost Ark, starring Harrison Ford, Karen Allen, Paul Freeman, John Rhys Davies. This is a good film.
Fun film. It's probably been 20 plus years since I've seen it, though.
Really? I just watched this a little while ago. I am a little surprised this is number 71 on the list, but it is a good film.
Yeah, it's a fun film. It started the Indiana Jones franchise. You'll notice that it is titled Raiders of the Lost Ark, and later on they inserted the Indiana Jones, kind of like how Star Wars Episode 4 was just Star Wars when it came out.
Yeah.
But it grew into something much bigger than anticipated. A fun film I should revisit.
Yeah. Maybe at some point we'll have to do an Indiana Jones series.
Yeah.
Can be interesting, so...
Once Upon a Time in America, 1984, a Sergio Leone film. I believe this was his last film. It is an epic story of Jewish gangsters, spans Depression era into the 1960s, with Robert De Niro, James Woods, Elizabeth Montgomery, Treat Williams. I'm forgetting the name of the girl in this. She's got very beautiful blue eyes. This is a powerful film. When it came out, it was not well received because the studio had butchered it in the editing. And then later, the director's cut was released. That is the version that I've seen, and it is a beautiful film. It's on par with The Godfather, probably a little lesser, but very strong. Tuesday Weld's the girl.
Plays Carol.
And Jennifer Connelly plays her as a little girl in the early sequences.
Number 69 on the list, Princess Mononoke. This is another Hayao Miyazaki, which we're familiar with his name from this list. Not one I've seen. I'm assuming that you haven't seen this either.
I've not seen it either.
The description is a journey to find the cure for a Tatarigami curse. Ashitaka finds himself in the middle of a war between the forest gods and Tatara, a mining colony. In this quest, he also meets San, the Mononoke Hime.
It's from 1997. Miyazaki films always have this wonderful mythology to them. Many times, mythologies that are basically just created out of nothing, seemingly, by Miyazaki, and he's just so skillful at it. Number 68, Memento, early Christopher Nolan film. Again, this is a bit of a gimmick film. It's about a man who has a condition where his memory only lasts for something like 20-something minutes. And so in order to be able to function, he has tattooed over himself important information. Your name, trust this person, you know how to do this. Been 15 years or so since I've seen this. I remember it's good, and it, of course, inaugurated pretty strong career for Christopher Nolan. Subsequent to this, with the Batman films, Dunkirk, Inception.
Yeah.
Strong film. You've not seen this?
No, I haven't.
You should see it. 2000 is when it was released.
Next on the list, number 67, is the 2003 film Old Boy from Chan-wook Park. Are you familiar with this?
I've heard of it. Is this not the film where he's... Well, it says, after being kidnapped and imprisoned for 15 years... Odisu is released only to find that he must find his captor in 5 days. I thought this was the film about the guy that's treated like a dog, but I think it's different. It's Asian, presumably in some degree a martial arts film, if memory serves. I've seen previews for it, but that was a very long time ago.
Yeah.
I guess it must be better than I would think. It's number 67 on this list.
Evidently.
Number 66, The Lives of Others.
This is a good
film.
film.
From 2006. I absolutely love this film. You really should see it. It is about a couple in the German Democratic Republic in Old East Germany. He is an artist, and he is, not to his knowledge, unbeknownst to him, everything that's going on in his apartment is being monitored by a Stasi agent who develops a sympathy for him. Unlikely, but powerful story. Highly recommend.
Yeah, this film is really strong. Great film. If you have not seen this, definitely add this to your list to see. This was culturally relevant, everything else.
Best foreign film Oscar winner.
Yeah, definitely a good film. Definitely one to add to your list. So, number 65, the 2008 film, another Pixar film, WALL-E. I like this film. I'm not sure whether I like this one better than Toy Story or the Toy Story franchise in general, but it's a lovable film, solid film, good film, fun, easy to enjoy. All of the Pixar films are easy to enjoy, but WALL-E is definitely a good film.
It might be my favorite Pixar film.
I'm not surprised by that.
So I saw it theatrically. This was back in 2008. So the opening sequence is stars and space and the majesticness of that. And then you have this old musical number playing over it about getting out of Yonkers. And then you go down to the devastated Earth, and just that juxtaposition of the beautiful starscapes and the corny old musical number had me at the get-go. It's a charming film. Some people are a little critical about its environmental message, but I think it does have something to say, and even if that's not your thing, I think the story is charming enough. The character WALL-E is charming enough. Really won me over. Great little film.
Yeah, I think aside from any criticisms of this film, like you said, it's charming enough that it's better than any of the criticisms. Good film. I'm a little surprised it's as high as 65, but a very solid film.
I had a niece that was in the process of learning to talk around the time this first came out on video, and some of her first words were, "Wally, Eva." That was easy for her to say.
Yep.
Number 64, Like Stars on Earth from 2007. It's a foreign film. The summary says, an 8-year-old boy is thought to be a lazy troublemaker until the new art teacher has the patience and compassion to discover the real problem behind his struggles in school. I don't know it.
Me neither. Know nothing about this, but it must be
Must be
pretty
good.
decent if it's 64 on the list. So, number 63 from 2009, a movie called 3 Idiots. I'm also unfamiliar with this one. It says, two friends are searching for their lost companion. They revisit their college days and recall the memories of their friend who inspired them to think differently even as the rest of the world called them idiots. Directed by a person named Rajkumar Hirani.
So probably Indian.
Yep.
I don't know it. 170 minutes.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight Rises, 2012, another Christopher Nolan film. This is the final film in his Dark Knight trilogy. It is not on the level of its immediate predecessor, but I think it's pretty solid. Some people did have some problems with the way the film ended. It's a weird play on A Tale of Two Cities. I thought it was good. I've only ever seen it once. I saw it theatrically. Of course, this film is infamous for the shooting that happened in Colorado at an early performance. It's a good film, though.
It's a strong film. It, like you said, it's not as good as its immediate predecessor, The Dark Knight. I'm surprised to see it as high as 62 on the list.
Yeah, I am too.
I thought Tom Hardy as Bane was just a less effective villain than Heath Ledger's Joker. Anne Hathaway was okay. Gary Oldman was good as usual. Christian Bale was fine as Batman. He's one of the better Batmans in the entire, arc of the Batman movies. But yeah, I just think this was less effective than The Dark Knight, and surprised to see it as high as 62 on the list.
Now, Bane is a character, Batman villain, I think, was introduced originally in the 90s. He's very briefly in the god-awful Batman and Robin movie. Apparently, this is the movie that did him right. But I remember hearing, because it's 2012, presidential election year, a conservative commentator complained that the character's name was Bane, and feeling that that was an obvious reference to Bain Capital, which Mitt Romney once worked at.
Wow.
Yeah.
Number 61 on the list, Django Unchained from 2012, another Quentin Tarantino film.
Django is how it's pronounced.
Okay. Yeah, this is another one I need to catch up on. No particular reason. I haven't seen it, just haven't gotten around to seeing it. It's from 2012. Very popular, well-received movie. A solid movie. Yeah, I'll let Nate talk about it a little bit.
Django is a character from spaghetti westerns. In them, he is white. In this film, he is black. He is played by Jamie Foxx, who is a slave who is freed by Christoph Waltz, who's a bounty hunter, because he knows he's seen a man that Christoph Waltz is assigned to get. And so he needs somebody who can recognize him so that he can get the right person. But Christoph Waltz's character is, I believe, Swiss, and he's sympathetic to the plight of the slaves. And so he agrees to make this man an equal partner. and there's got to be some satisfaction to being a black man who's now allowed to go and kidnap and shoot bad white men. And the case that he's assigned to eventually, well, of course it relates to a slave plantation on which Jamie Foxx had previously served as a slave, and they have his wife. And so they decide to get the wife back and kill the bad guy. It gets a lot more complicated than they originally planned. On solid movie, not my favorite Tarantino film, very bloody, interesting Western, even though it's set in the South in the 1850s, pre-Civil War. You should see it. Again, not my favorite Tarantino film, but good. Coco, 2017. This is a Disney movie inspired by the Mexican Day of the Dead. It's about a young boy searching for his
Deceased
relatives. Well, he goes to visit his deceased relatives, and he's also a big fan of this late musician.
His great-great-grandfather.
Great-great-grandfather, yeah. So who he idolizes, but who is not his great-great-grandmother, or his great-grandmother doesn't want to talk about him because he left when she was a little girl. Better than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect of this coming out. I thought it was kind of just an international play. It's really quite a solid film.
Yeah, it is solid.
It has broad appeal. Obviously, it did well outside of the United States. Not surprised to see this high on this list because of its international appeal.
And it's certainly something different.
Yeah, especially from Disney. Number 59 on this list. This is kind of a surprise to me. The 2018 film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. If you have not seen this film, definitely add this film to your list. This is not your typical Spider-Man movie, and it delivers a great message in an effective manner. It's an animated film.
It's really good. Spider-Man's been just done, and it made it fresh.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Which is shouldn't be possible. This movie should not be number 59 on this list, but it is a very strong film. It is one of the better films of 2018. I more or less dismissed it when I saw early advertising for it. I'm like, this is something that was made for the video market that I guess turned out better, so they decided to give it a theatrical release. That is not the case. This is really solid material, well performed, very creative. I highly recommend it. It's a different kind of Spider-Man movie.
Absolutely.
Number 58, Dangle from 2016. Former wrestler Mahavir Singh Polkat and his two wrestler daughters struggle towards glory at the Commonwealth Games in the face of societal oppression. Not sure exactly where this, maybe Hong Kong? Commonwealth Games implies the old British Empire. I don't know it, though. Don't know this movie.
Yeah, not familiar with it. Number 57 on the list, Your Name from 2016 from director Makoto Shinkai. Not familiar with this one either. The description says, two strangers find themselves linked in a bizarre way. When a connection forms, will distance be the only thing to keep them apart?
I've seen this.
Have you?
Yeah, I saw it theatrically because it had like a 99% Rotten Tomatoes rating or something about it. And so I went to see it on day that I thought I got off work early this particular day. And I went to see it, and it really won me over. It is a body swap movie, but it has some interesting plays on that. I would recommend it.
Yeah.
And a lot of Japanese culture in it.
Cool.
Number 56, Capernaum from 2018. I don't know this one. While serving a 5-year sentence for a violent crime, a 12-year-old boy sues his parents for neglect.
Yeah, don't know anything about that one either. Number 55 on this list from 1931, the Charlie Chaplin film City Lights. I'm thinking you've probably seen it.
I've seen this film, of course. Yeah. Beautiful film. The first talkie film, but Charlie Chaplin doesn't actually say a word in it. Other characters talk in it. He plays a tramp. He ends up working in a factory for a while. You've probably seen clips where they have the corn cob machine. The machines try to feed him, and he gets lost in the gears. And he falls asleep on a statue that's going to be unveiled. And when they remove the tarp over it, there's this homeless guy sleeping on it. And he befriends this blind flower girl, and decides that he's going to get her the money for the operation to restore her sight. And that's how he ends up working at the factory. And there's also a time where he's in a department store overnight, and you see part of this film in the movie The Joker. That's the film they go to see at the Thomas Wayne fundraiser, where he's on the roller skates and it looks like he's going to fall over that precipice. A good movie. Long time since I've seen it, but a classic.
Yeah. Not very long, at just 87 minutes.
Modern Times, 1936. I may have gotten this a little confused. In fact, I did. So City Lights is about Charlie Chaplin falls in love with the flower girl, needs to find a way to raise money. He actually does that through boxing. Okay. So there's a funny boxing sequence in it. Modern Times is about Charlie Chaplin is the little tramp, and he has to work all these crappy jobs, and including where he gets stuck in the gears. There's a scene where he's being chased by these people, and so there's this scene where he's walking around, and there's this truck involved in construction. It has a flag sticking out of the back of it, a red flag, like for beware space. This is a wide load kind of situation. The flag falls off of the back of the truck. So Charlie Chaplin sees it. He picks it up, starts waving the red flag at the truck driver to try to get their attention. Come back, get your flag. And while he's doing this, a big group of communists marches behind him, comes off of a side road, and so it looks like he is waving the red flag and leading the communists, and so he gets arrested. And fun film. Charlie Chaplin films are for the most part great. The theatrical films are. I haven't seen too many of the shorts. Shorts are good too. You should definitely familiarize yourself with Charlie Chaplin if you're not already.
Interesting that Charlie Chaplin plays a tramp in both of these films.
That was his character, the little tramp. That Charlie Chaplin outfit that you think of with the bowler cap and the cane and the saggy pants, which was his trademark. Strong. I recommend seeing Chaplin films.
Yeah. Number 53 on the list, from 1942, the movie Casablanca. Classic film literacy film. I have not yet seen this.
Not seen it. I have seen it, of course. Seen it twice. I think the first time I saw it was 99, and then the last time I saw it was last year. So I had a 20-year gap between seeing this film, between viewings of this film. It's good. I was a little underwhelmed by it the original time I saw it because I had so much expectations, but giving a lot of time, 2 decades, I enjoyed it a lot more the second viewing. It's strong. It's a film that's kind of a miracle that it became what it became because it really wasn't intended to be that much. And audiences just really responded to it. Humphrey Bogart is an expatriate American. He's very cynical. He had originally gone over to Europe to fight in the Spanish Civil War, become disillusioned, ends up running this bar and club in North Africa in the city of Casablanca in Morocco. The film is set in December of 1941. And he has so there's a girl that he had met and fallen in love with Paris, shows up with her husband, who she had thought was dead when they were together in Paris, but had found out that he was alive, which is why she didn't flee the city with Humphrey Bogart, and he never quite got over it. Her husband is a resistance leader, and they're trying to get out to America to do fundraising or something. And he has the opportunity to possibly help them get out or not. It's a classic film. It is a film literacy film. It's one of the most film literacy films of film literacy films.
Yep.
You should see it. Number 52, Psycho, from 1960, Alfred Hitchcock film, which both made Anthony Perkins a star and forever truncated his career by making him so associated with playing the madman. He's actually a pretty versatile actor. Been in some things before this, but obviously this is what people remember him for. Based very loosely on a true story. He's a crazy guy. He runs this motel, Janet Leigh, and the first 20 or so minutes of this film, 30 minutes or so of this film, just follow the Janet Leigh character, and you think this is her story. She's a secretary who steals some money from her boss kind of impulsively. She's also having an affair and runs away with it and goes to this hotel. And when she's in the hotel, decides, I can't do this. I got to return the money and I got to face the consequences. She never gets the opportunity to do so because she is horribly murdered by, spoiler, Anthony Perkins in drag.
Yep.
Has this mother fixation. classic film. The studio did not want Hitchcock to make it. He had to invest some of his own money in it because he wanted to do something so different from what he had been doing before, which were things like Rear Window or Vertigo or North by Northwest, these big Technicolor, CinemaScopes films. And this is kind of a dark, kind of slimy film for the time.
Yeah. It's a classic film. It's a great film. Everyone's familiar with certain scenes from this film. This was remade relatively recently, wasn't it?
Well, it was, I think there may have been some kind of a recent remake, but there was the infamous shot-for-shot 1998 Gus Van Sant remake, which I never saw, which just
was not
seemed
very
like
well received, right?
a pointless exercise.
Yeah.
Like you already have a film perfect, and you make it with slightly lesser actors. I want to see Anne Heche played the Janet Leigh part in that, and forget who played the killer. But yeah, I don't really see a point in seeing it other than a morbid curiosity. At some point I may want to see it. But there's no point in seeing it. If you see one Psycho, see 1960s Psycho.
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock's great. I enjoy his films. He has a great ability to build tension where other people perhaps couldn't. I'm kind of surprised more of his films haven't been remade, and at the same time I'm glad more of his films haven't been remade.
He's also a super adaptive filmmaker. And of course, he did a romantic comedy called Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is a solid romantic comedy. And a couple other things he did that was a little out of his wheelhouse, but he was, of course, known for his thrillers, his mysteries, but he was very adaptable within that. So you have something like Psycho is not like anything you could have made in the 40s. And he was making films in the 1970s that had a sense of innovation to them. And so I have said before, if I could make one director immortal, it would have been Alfred Hitchcock.
Number 51 on the list, and our last film for today. This is from 1963, a film titled High and Low from Akira Kurosawa. Have you seen this one?
Not.
An executive of a shoe company becomes a victim of extortion when his chauffeur's son is kidnapped and held for ransom. I also have not seen this film, not familiar with it, but ranked 51 on the list. We know Kurosawa by name, know that he's a solid director, so probably pretty good.
Seemed like a good setup for a film, too.
Yeah, yep. So that concludes today's list of the IMDb Top 250. We will be back relatively soon with our final installment. Thanks for putting up with the delay in recording as we caught up with editing and did some seasonal topics and things like that, but these will come out a little bit more closer together. I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And this has been Rob and Nate Record a Podcast. Well, I think I win the bet.
Yeah. There was, probably 15-ish?
I don't know if it was quite that high, but probably at least 10.
Yeah, 10.
With those foreign films and, yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised that there's that many that...
Yeah.
And I got my Charlie Chaplins confused.
Yeah, that's all right. That happens.
But they were in a row, so that...
Well, yeah, they were directly opposed to each other, and I can see where he plays a similar character in some films, how it might be easy to mix up the plots.
Well, he's a little bit like John Wayne. You know, he's basically the same character.
Yeah.
There's a few exceptions. Monsieur Vettereau, he plays a very un-Charlie Chaplin-like character in that. But, yeah.
Yeah, so that's that one in the books. I'll get this edited soon. I still, of course, have the other one to do, but yeah, we'll get it out as soon as possible. So I'll probably work on these while you're in Boise.
Yeah.
So...